Okay, all right. Our next session, we're going to move on, because I don't want to cut into your break too much. It's going to be on navigating uncertainty, mobilizing for career resilience and vision on a path to the C-suite. And for that discussion, please, can you give a very warm welcome to Kike Oniwinde Agoro, Chief Executive and founder of the BYP Network, Calmetta Coleman, Chief Operating Officer of Chicago Urban League. Yes, you heard right. She's come all the way from Chicago. Thank you so much for being with us today. That's how much the BYP Network means to her. And Elaine, Chief People Officer of Ogilvy EMEA. Thank you so much. Okay, Kike, I'm leaving this one in your hands, okay? So you're going to have to keep the time.
Okay. Hello. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, awesome. Firstly, I'm so excited about this panel. I know I'm a CEO, but it's of my own company. These are actual CEOs or C-level individuals in top companies. And it's just so exciting for us to learn from them. Like, literally take notes. I need everyone to have your notepad out, your pens out, because that's what it's about, right? We're mobilizing to get to the top, to the C-suite position in different organizations or whatever that looks like. So please get ready, because we are about to hear a lot. Both of you to introduce yourself. And I don't want you to be humble. I want them to know your background, know the journey to get into where you are today, so that they, again, understand why we're here today. So let's start with Calmetta.
Thank you so much, Kike. It sounds like it's on. It's on, right? Yeah. All right, so my name's Calmetta Coleman. I am Chief Operating Officer of the Chicago Urban League. It's an organization that works to achieve equity for Black families and communities through social and economic empowerment. We are actually one of 96 affiliates across the United States. And we are actually one of the oldest and largest, so there's that. But just to give a little bit more about myself, I actually started my career as a journalist. I was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal for 8 years, covering international business. I did that until I had my first child, and it just got harder to do that travel. I was actually recruited to then go work for Bank One, which is a predecessor to a company that most of you have probably heard of, JP Morgan Chase. Where I served as a director of communications, a senior communications level, where I was close to the C-suite, I would say, and not even intentionally. It just sort of came about that way. I worked there for about 5 years before I was recruited to join a global PR agency, Ketchum Communications. Then I went on to join the University of Chicago, which is a major research university in the United States that actually is global. It's got locations around the world. And then ultimately I ended up in where I am now. I did not start off at the Chicago Urban League in the C-suite. I was recruited to run their external affairs, which is communications. And I'll talk a little bit more through some of the questions about that experience and what led me to where I am now. I'm also a mother, which I do love. I'm a wife. I have 2 children who are very much still in my pocketbook, even though my son graduated from college in May. He's now in business school. And I have a daughter who just started her junior year in college.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Elaine, and when Kike said don't be humble, I was thinking, but I am really humble, so this is really difficult for me. So I am the Chief People Officer at a marketing and communications agency called Ogilvy. It's a very difficult word to pronounce. It's a global marketing agency. I am responsible for everything people in the EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. It's about 5,000 people. We're across 25 different markets, which I absolutely love because the variety of dealing with teams from Germany to South Africa is wonderful. I started my career, I went straight to work from school. I had no idea what I wanted to do, other than that I wanted to travel. So the advice given to me was to join a travel agency on what is now known on what you would all know as an apprentice scheme. Not very great or very broad thinking in what a career could mean for me. I had no idea how strong I was academically until I left school. So the conversation should have been a lot broader about my choices, because I had far more choices than I actually realised. But I am from Preston in Lancashire. You can probably hear from the accent. I finished my apprenticeship there, and then I moved to London and went to join British Airways. And from there, I joined the contact centre, so started in an entry-level role, and throughout my career at British Airways and through other industries, hotels, real estate, and now marketing and communications, just had a progression of more senior, more complex roles as I've gone through that.
Awesome, thank you so much. And I just want to give another shout out. We actually have Renee Hunt in the building, who's Chief Technology Officer at Compare the Market. So let's just clap for all of them of being in the room. So a lot of the blockers to get into C-suite is that some people even just getting to managerial position is tough, right? You go through so much microaggressions or imposter syndrome, and sometimes you just don't want to say yes and take that route. It would be great to understand some of the challenges that you guys have had and what allowed you to overcome that on your journey to C-suite.
Wow. So I was never planning to be going toward the C-suite, I would say. The first thing is that, you go into a job, you find yourself, I heard a lot of people talk about corporate, I've had that experience. It can be really tough. The first thing is you go in and you do your work, you do your best work, and nobody can take that away from you. What does happen sometimes, and it's happened to me, is you do your best work and it makes your boss look good, right? And that can sometimes feel like, I'm doing all the work, they're getting all the credit, but it goes two ways, right? So, because sometimes that means that boss is going to fight for you in rooms because they're really fighting for themselves. But you still benefit, right? So you still benefit, and you have to recognize what you contribute in your own self-worth. And so I talked about it, and it makes me sound like a little bit like I couldn't keep a job because I've been in a few places, but that wasn't really the case. So you grow in your career, you have these experiences, and you start to recognize your own value, right? You know what you contribute, you know what you can do. I was in one job where I knew how much I had contributed, bringing innovative ideas, executing on those ideas, and I watched, frankly, white women be promoted over me. And then one particular white woman who I had actually helped along her way, basically seemed to then say to me when I started to sort of say, hey, this is where I think I should be, she wanted me to look around for somebody else to support me. And so when I learned that you ask for the job that you want, but if the answer is no, that tells you as much as if the answer is yes. And so for me, I had to realize that I needed to go somewhere else where I was valued for what I could contribute and who I was.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I recognize a lot of that. I think for me, the biggest challenges were either not being seen. So you're there, you're doing great work, but nobody kind of knows who you are. Or actually doing such a good job that you just get taken for granted. So people see you where you're at, not necessarily for where you can be. So a big part of it was really, really thinking to myself, where do I want to be? And a pivotal moment for me was, as I said, I went straight into work from school. And I was at British Airways, and I'd worked on a project. I was asked to do a report. Never written a report before, so did a bit of research, wrote the report. And not my manager, but her manager came to me and she said, did you write this? And I said, yes. She goes, it's wonderful. And I was like, oh, thank you. And she's going, tell me more about you. Where have you come from? Tell me about your journey. First time anybody had really taken any personal interest in me. Not what I was doing, but who was I? So she asked me about my journey so far, and I was saying this to her, and she said, so you haven't been to university and you wrote this? And I was like, yeah. And she said to me, so are you ambitious? Where do you want to be? And I remember sitting there thinking, am I ambitious? I don't know, am I ambitious? What I do know is I don't want to work for people when I think I can do a better job than them. I want to take direction from people I can learn from and I can grow from. And I want a role where I can be more in control of what I do on a day-to-day basis. So I said this to her, not as articulately as I said then, my little northern accent. And she said, okay, so what do you want to do? I said, actually, I would like to do my degree. She said, okay, we'll sponsor you. She said, you research it, and depending on the cost, we'll see what we can fund. Next day, I had a list of options for her. She sponsored me, I did my degree. She said, what do you want to do next? I said, I want to do my MBA. She said, okay. And I was really lucky, but one thing I did learn is when people offer help, take it. Trust the offer of what's been given to you. Somebody says, I would love to mentor you. Give me a call. Take them up on the offer. I only give out offers that I mean, and most people I have met are the same.
Thank you, Elaine. When we were speaking earlier, she was like, if people want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, they can. I told her not to mention that, but here I am mentioning it because I know it will be bombarded. But just on that, that's incredible that that happened to you. I guess others want that kind of luck or good fortune. What can they do to get mentors or sponsors or just individuals that will take a bet on them?
I think first of all, they spend some time getting to know you. Like, who are you? Get to know yourself. What are the things you're passionate about? What are the things you want to get involved in? What are your strengths? And then thinking about, okay, where might I want to go? So where are my gaps? What are my development areas? And then sitting up and looking around and saying, so where might I get some support for that? What are my networks like? Who am I interacting with? You may come to an event like this, see a speaker on stage, the person next to you. Make contact, talk to people, understand what they can offer, what you can offer. But first of all, I think you really do need to know yourself and what it is you're looking for.
Calmetta?
I want to add to that. I agree with all of that. But I would also say, because I've been in a position where I have reached out to someone and they never responded, don't be offended by that and don't let that stop you. So find another person, reach out to someone else, and that may be the answer. And then the last panel, a couple of people mentioned that they have mentors who don't know that they're their mentors. I have a lot of that, right? So put yourself next to people, reach out to them. Don't necessarily say, hey, will you be my mentor? Will you be my sponsor? But put yourself in a position where they get to know you, they get to know your strengths and what you can bring, and then they will speak about you in rooms when you're not even there.
Awesome, thank you. And look, we're talking about the C-suite title, but what does it actually take to perform at that level? What are people up against? Calmetta.
So I will start, before I was in the C-suite, I mentioned that I worked for a PR agency, but there were always people who talked about that it's a lifestyle, like being in the C-suite. And I didn't know what that meant because I hadn't even aspired to it. And it is. And so it is a lot of work. You have to bring your best self. You have to trust yourself. We actually, at the Chicago Urban League, run a program that's a little bit similar to BYP Network, which is how Kike and I got involved and how we met. One of the biggest measurements of how people advance in their career coming out of that program is about self-confidence, like really having confidence in who you are and your work and understanding what you bring, and then being able to sell yourself, right? I like that Kike opened by saying, don't be humble. And I would say, take that in your room. Like when you meet someone and they want to know, who you are, what you bring, don't be afraid to, really talk about that. And then the biggest thing in terms of getting into the C-suite for me is once I started to recognize, like you said, that my abilities were much better than some of the people who I was working underneath, I learned something that I didn't even learn it. It's something that I learned growing up in Sunday school, that we have not because we ask not. And then I started asking for the roles that I wanted. And I think that is really the biggest thing in terms of getting into that space.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing I've learned most is resilience, because it is a pressurized job. It's always on. You're always meeting new people, and there's always demands. It can be quite lonely as well, in all honesty. So resilience is really, really important. And by that, I mean when things happen, whether it's an event at work, at home, or there's a change that might be a change you instigated, actually, or something that's happened onto you. It's just taking a moment to pause and reflect and just really think about what just happened there. What happened there? How did I show up? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Whether it's good or whether it's not so good. And what's the learning that I can get from that? Because continuous learning, I think, is really key to maintaining your performance and doing as best as you can in any role. So take the moment to stop, reflect, and think about what the learnings were, and then how do you apply that for what you know is coming? And then when things happen to you unexpectedly, you dig back into that toolbox of resources that you are building for yourself. The other thing I would say is build your own network. What's your support network look like? Because as a job, it can feel very lonely. But we have all different needs. I'm a mother too. I've got young men. I used to say boys, but they told me I need to change that narrative. They are young men. Fiercely protective, even though they're 6'4", so they can look after themselves. But if there's challenges with them, because they challenged me intellectually. When they were babies, I just had to feed them and give them room to run around. Now I have to think, how do I influence these young men? So I have people in my network that I can go to when I want to talk as a mum. I have people in my network that I can talk to when I want to be a people geek and be all HR all day, which I can be. And then I have people in my network, in my current place where I work now, is who can help me navigate this complex web of stakeholders that we're dealing with. So think about what you need. What do you need, and who's your network that can support you with that, whether it's at work or whether it's at home?
Thank you. And I guess some people in the crowd are probably inspired by the fact that you're both mothers. I'm also a mother. And there is this notion that you can't maybe do both or have both. You can't work your way up and also have a family. How do you balance both, essentially? And how are you able to kind of just maintain that well-being? And just to also add, of course, there's aging parents as well, or, the death of a parent. So life. How do you manage life as well as, performing at a high level?
With lots of help. So someone earlier said something we say a lot in the U.S., which is you can't have it all, but not all at the same time. And it's mostly true. I think that I know when my kids were very young, when my son was first born, I couldn't even really entertain the idea of a nanny being the person that I was growing up. That was something that rich people had. But it became immediately clear to me that I needed one if I was going to still be able to work and have the house be somewhat clean. And my husband also worked, and so I started talking to friends and got referrals and got that help. Also getting help from family in terms of being able to manage that. My father actually ended up retiring early, so when the nanny was done, he would actually be the one who picked up the kids from preschool and daycare and all of that. And so that is a big help. But then it is also taking time for yourself. You have to do that. Like, you have to have self-care. So for me, whether that was a spa day or just spending time with friends and valuing those relationships, otherwise you couldn't do it, right? Because I don't pay for therapy. I talk to my friends.
And I love a spa day. Spa every month. There is a spa day. Elaine?
Very much, I think, I would agree with a lot of what you said there. I think it's about figuring out that you can't necessarily do it all at the same level of intensity or speed at the same time. So it's kind of figuring out at this moment, where do I want to put more energy, or where can I put more energy and speed, and what might just need to fall back a little bit. Doesn't mean it's got to fall back forever, but at that moment in time, that's what you need to work for yourself. It definitely takes a village, and that village can be made up of all sorts of people. I would say don't be shy in asking for help when you need it. And really think about how, again, some good advice I got when I was earlier in my career. I think it was like my first or second promotion. And a lady said to me, what are you going to do with your pay rise? And I thought, my pay rise? It wasn't really much of one, but it was a rise. And I said, I don't know. She said, you've got young children, haven't you? And I said, yes. She said, well, these years, think about how you can make that pay rise work for you. What do you need to do to set up your life so that you can be the best that you can be, whether you're at home or whether you're at work? So I said, I don't understand what you mean. She said, well, one of the first things I did was get a cleaner. Cleaner? And I was like, God, I can't even imagine that. But I did it. And it meant that at the weekends, I could spend time with my children and enjoy my children, enjoy my husband. I wasn't doing the shopping, doing the housework, just catching up on chores. I actually felt I had some quality time with them. So, it didn't feel any different in the household economics, that small pay rise that I'd got, but for me, the difference was immense.
Yes, I agree. pay for what you need. Absolutely. We are now going to Q&A. I think that we've got quite a lot of questions.
Yeah, we have got a few questions here. So I'll start with the first one. Is what advice would you give black women in senior leadership rooms to effectively influence, challenge, counter the majority idea approach that isn't inclusive?
Ooh, that's a big one, isn't it? I think, like, be true to yourself and your values. I live a lot by my values, and I do put myself out there a lot, even where it may not be a popular opinion. So sometimes when I hear things and I think, that's jarring me, but I need to think about how I talk to people about this, is I do spend just a little bit of time internally thinking through, so what have I heard here? What's the issue? Why is it jarring me? And what do I want to achieve as a result of the thing that I am going to say? And often it's like getting behind or underneath what the core reason is that that person has that concern or the thing that they're worried about. So I try to put myself in their shoes and think about where might they be coming from by making this statement or trying to make this decision, and going for it. Honestly, it's just being bold. In the role I have now, I've been given the role for a reason. I chose the company that I wanted to work with because I felt they aligned to my values. So I really operate from a position of trust. And if it doesn't land well, I'm good with that if I personally feel that I've done what I needed to do. And I know that's not as easy when you're more junior in your roles. You do have to think about that. But in the role that I have today, that's how I operate.
Yeah, so I would add two things to that. And the first is, I'll go back to where I started, is that your work, your contributions have to be unquestionable, right? So you know what you put into it, you're always doing your best, and so that whatever they throw at you has to always be balanced by, the work that you know that you can do. The second thing is about networks, and I will say that when I was asked to speak on this panel, I first thought, I'm from the U.S., I don't know if the issues are the same, but just listening this morning, the issues are the same, right? They really are, and so I will share what's been really helpful to me, and it's something that I didn't lean on enough early in my career that I do now. Like most of you, if you work for corporations, you probably have something called business resource groups. I'm not sure what they're called here. I know we had it at JP Morgan Chase, and that was the place where I learned to be a part of that group. So you can also be at a level where you don't realize that people, the women under you, are looking up to you. The black people under you are looking up to you. So being a part of those groups, having someone to talk about those experiences really was helpful to me. But beyond that, I often felt like, okay, I don't have time. I'm a member of a sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha. I belong to a bunch of other groups, and I would always feel like I'm working hard. I don't really have time to be active in those organizations. So 4 years ago, and I'll be honest, it was selfishly so that my daughter could be a legacy, I became active again in the organization, and it really was my first time in my professional career. And now I could really kick myself of what I had been missing out on, is that these are other professional black women who have similar experiences. And not only can we learn from and lean on each other, but we actually are a powerful network. And so if you think about how do the mainstream actually get into rooms and get business? Well, we can do that. We're now at a point where we can do that with each other in terms of leaning on each other. And so that has been one of the biggest ways that I could say that I've kind of really learned to, be that for other black women, not just black women, but black men who often, sometimes need more help or, kind of more places to lean on.
Yeah, just add one more thing as well, because we do often find ourselves in a room with nobody looking like us. So having allies is so important. So across my leadership team, I know there are certain people I can reach out to and I can support and I can bring into a discussion or an argument, and they will help me with delivering that message, because there aren't enough of us. Yeah. So when we have the opportunity to be around each other, it's great. There's a freedom and a way to relax, but there's times when we're not always together, so we have to find where we get those supports in other ways.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all we've got time for on that panel discussion. Please give a massive round of applause to Calmetta and Elaine, and also Kike. Thank you.